Let me introduce you our next guest, Kerry Worsnop. We've had Kerry on the show before. She is a farmer from Gisborne, elected, I think to the Gisborne District Council, not last time, the time before. I think she is still currently a current councillor. She did a BCom at Massey University, which I think we can probably forgive her for. It's not a very good university, but she went there anyhow. I guess it's the only place you can do an agricultural degree, did she? And she did farm management also at Massey University as well. But she's gone on to do much better than you would expect a graduate from Massey University to do. And she has become, as I said, elected. She's got her own farm, which I think she farms in concert with her husband. And the apogee of it all, she has won herself a Northfield Scholarship. And we talked, I think, before she went on that scholarship, but she has now finished that scholarship on agricultural policy and what the future of farming should look like in New Zealand. And she joins us now. Kerry, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you on.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
You've done very well for a Massey graduate.
I was actually an extramural graduate, so
oh my God, it's even worse.
I didn't even go to the actual university.
Oh, very good.
I know, right? Good God, you're lucky. You're lucky.
Oh, you must have married somebody then, did you? Oh, well, no. Seriously, what was your background?
High school, so no.
So where did you go to high school?
Western Heights High School in Rotorua Public School.
Oh, okay. And somewhere along the line, you met your husband and went farming with him in, the Gisborne, Tairāwhiti area?
We were shepherding. He was a little bit higher up the ladder than me, but I was just a shepherd, and we chucked that into go fencing and contracting, and to try and get on the ladder of owning a bit of dirt for ourselves. Which didn't actually work out that well first crack, to tell you the truth. Ran into the GFC and all those sorts of things, but have managed to claw our way back. So hence.
So you run a farm currently somewhere, do you?
Yep. We've got a block of our own, which is 40 minutes west of Gisborne, and then we also lease some land up the east coast, which is the bigger proportion of our business these days.
What are you running?
We're sheep and beef. The sheep's a little bit dire at the moment, but beef are holding their own. So a bit like everybody, we're head down, bum up, focus on trying to make the economics stack up.
Well, just to explain that to a lot of our listeners, will you please? Because one of the things I didn't realise, I have a couple of friends who are sheep farmers. When you say it's dire, it is really dire. So nobody wants to buy wool anymore, it would appear.
Well, that's sort of been a long-running trend, I don't think. So I've never farmed with wool being great, and I've been farming for almost 20 years. So I think wool's a bit of an old story. It's just an increasingly dire story. What's new is that lamb prices basically dropped off a bluff about 12 months ago, and that happened at the same time that farm inflation was running at something like 30% for many costs like fertiliser and insurance has just had a whopping great big leap, and basically everything went up massively. So we've had this pincer movement, which, add interest rates, obviously actual rates and all sorts of things into the mix. And I think actual profitability, so what you get to keep at the end of all your costs, is looking worse than it has since the 80s, so I'm told, even though I wasn't up to much in the 80s.
Well, it wasn't very good in the 80s. I lived through that as well, not as a farmer, but I saw the effects of that, and that was dire in terms of the number of bankruptcies, but also the number of people who had mental health and suicide issues as well.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that concerns probably a lot of us that have had the opportunity to engage with. Certainly I've had the opportunity to be around the world recently, and coming back to New Zealand, we're in a particularly bad position because it's the perfect storm. That saying gets used a lot. High interest rates, low prices. So confidence is really poor. Half the country has been extraordinarily dry this year, pushing them to sell product that's not worth anything. And then, of course, half of the east coast of the North Island incurred massive costs on the back of the cyclones less than what are we now? Just over a year ago. So just the resilience, the buffer that normally people try to carry to weather the storms, we haven't had much choice but to, basically hemorrhage that buffer. So a lot of people are, there's not much between them and the red line at the moment, which is not a comfortable place to be.
I've just had a friend of mine contact me and say that on their farm, they are actually converting. They say that there's no point in farming sheep.
To what?
Forestry. They're growing forests.
Yeah. So we actually, it's an interesting dynamic with regards to forestry. So the carbon market exploded, you'll be aware, probably 3 or 4 years ago. And then because there was no limits on what you could do, it just went gangbusters. And I think the government sort of went and gone, oh my goodness, this is actually really, it's getting a bit out of control. And so they started putting in reviews and whatnot, and that's knocked the confidence of the carbon investors quite a bit. And then on top of that, you had the cyclones, which of course laid bare that pine trees shouldn't go everywhere. And I think as a result of that, things have slowed down a little bit. But the reality is people are really desperate for options that shore up how much income they can bring in. And so there will be a lot of people running the numbers on trees at the moment. The problem with that is, to be honest, the log market is terrible too. So you're very heavily reliant on carbon, and frankly, if the ETS actually works, the carbon market's supposed to fall over in the long term too. That's the whole point of it. I think it's a case of balance. Everything in balance. If you can, do some trees, do some other things, just keep some perspective around the long term has kind of been what I've been saying.
Now, you have been away on this Northfield Scholarship. Perhaps you could explain to non-rural folk, what is a Northfield Scholarship?
So if you go back ages ago, post-World War II, there was an English man who had a motor company and earned himself quite a lot of money as a result of that. And he went over to the US and learned a lot from Henry Ford. And so the powers that be in Britain were trying to stimulate a recovery post-World War II and were trying to get productivity back into their primary sector. They approached him and said, look, what do you think we should do? And would you be supportive of something that would help? And he said, hey, look, I really think people can learn from going out and seeing what other people are doing and bringing that information home. And so he was Lord Northfield, and the Northfield experience was born out of that. And it's carried on in, I guess, the modern era with scholarships that different countries around the world offer. We awarded 4 the year in 2023, the year that I did it. And this current year, 2024, there are another 4. So every year they give out these scholarships, and the intention is that you will have a burning question that you want to answer, and you'll do your best to find who has those answers and to basically travel the world, meeting people, talking to people and listening, and bring something back to New Zealand that we might find useful.
Okay, so where did you go and what did you bring back?
So I focused on the issues that we're having in agricultural policy, and being a Gisborne District Councillor at the time, it was deeply frustrating for me that we didn't seem to be able to do things that seemed really obvious that we should do.
When you say we, are you talking about the government or local government or both?
I think, to be honest, it's shared. I think the entire system is, really suffers from pretty similar problems. It just depends whether you're talking a micro level or a macro level. And the issue, it's quite hard to see what exactly is causing the problems when you're up really close and in the problem. And I think that's the benefit of being able to remove yourself and go overseas. The ability to compare what others do and then look back to New Zealand, really, you could see much more clearly just how, we think a certain way. We have cultural overlays. We have certain paradigms that you don't necessarily think about when you're in them. And what I hadn't really realised, so, we have a policy environment that's trying to shift behaviour regarding all sorts of things. This applies beyond agriculture as well. And we try to, and for the main part, we try to use regulation to change those things. And that's quite problematic when those rules come with a lot of cost, as is the case with agricultural regulation regarding the environment. And you kind of go, well, we make a rule, you just have to do it. But somebody has to fund that doing if that action is hugely expensive, which a number of agricultural policies come with fairly enormous costs.
Well, what are you thinking of
Farmers,
in particular?
So I think just a pretty basic example.